Lord Takeru and Lady Tomoe lived in the Ashina castle, presumably a long time ago. Little is known about them, but I'm going to weave all the small facts into a story for you. According to Isshin himself, Lady Tomoe was one of the greatest masters on the sword. He said,
"Hesitation is defeat."
Tomoe. There aren't many masters of the sword like her. To see her fight, it's like she's dancing.
He entrusted her to train his adopted grandson, Genichiro. If you read the Fragrant Flower note written by Takeru, it says, "It is said that relatives of Tomoe once gathered the fountainhead fragrance and arrived at the palace." Except that the Japanese term used here means relatives in a very broad way, which is more likely to be translated as clan. So, if Tomoe's clan, within her lifetime or before that, gathered the fragrance and arrived at the palace, the Fountainhead Palace, that makes her one of the ancient Okami clan who have ascended to the divine realm a long time ago. That is further confirmed when you study the floating passage skill description. While an Ashina combat art, it was taught by an outsider, and such is considered heretical. The master of this technique crossed the floating passage and descended into Ashina. Her name was Tomoe. Just like the wolf, Tomoe has the power of resurrection. She had sworn an immortal oath to Takeru, the former divine heir. When they first arrived, Takeru brought a sakura tree branch from his homeland. He had crafted it onto a tree behind the castle, and that is how the sakura tree of Ashina Castle, the Everblossom, came to be. It is stated clearly in the game, but it is so easy to miss. Lord Takeru's homeland is the Divine Realm. Aromatic Flower and Aromatic Branch tell us. Grafted by Takeru, who took the branch from the Divine Realm as a parting relic, Takeru would likely gaze upon this branch when once it bloomed, reminded of home. Takeru is human. In one of her notes, Tomoe speaks about restoring Takeru's humanity. So, we know that Takeru and Tomoe descended into Ashina from the Divine Realm. What did the two foreigners seek in Ashina? Let's take a look at Ashina's recent history. If you listen to Isshin Ashina recalling the rebellion and the old days, he says,
"Hesitation is defeat."
But we were heretics, and we were weak. For many long, excruciating years, we couldn't even pray at the water from the springs.
We also know that it is the Interior Ministry that took over Ashina back in the days. They are well aware of the dangers of dealing with the people of Ashina. Ministry dowsing powder description states, "The ministry feared Ashina, her eyes bloodshot with the waters of rejuvenation. This powder acted as a ward for when the time came to turn flames to her walls." So, we know that praying to waters was considered heresy by the ministry. We know that the way of Tomoe, both the lightning and the sword techniques, are considered heresy as well. We know of the Tomoe's and water's connection to the divine realm. We also know of the dragon's stagnation. Kuro, divine child, and the wolf, all of them bear its grey marks. Let's try to weave all these facts into a single story. The divine dragon of the Everblossom came from the west long ago, eventually making its way to this land. Some parts of Ashina are exceedingly old. Water coursing through her ancient rocks and soil allowed the dragon to take root. The prayers given to the waters and the fountainhead perhaps were among the things that made the waters so special and attractive to the dragon. So when the internal ministry took over and forbade the old ways, the prayers stopped coming and nurturing the dragon. The time went on and the stagnation set in, affecting the dragon and everyone related to it. And so, the divine heir of dragon's heritage and his oathbound descended from the divine realm to restore the old ways. With their help, the lands were taken back from the ministry's hands. With their help, Ashina was being restored to her former glory. We know that Tomoe and Takeru stayed in the Ashina castle for a while, long enough for Genichiro, Isshin's foster grandchild, to master the way of Tomoe. But their efforts were not enough. The stagnation was getting worse. At the same time, Takeru's immortality was tempting people, just like it did with Kuro. It was decided that the immortal severance should be performed, relieving Takeru of his immortality. For that, they first needed to return to the Divine Realm and acquire the tears of the Divine Dragon. I was surprised to realize that despite originally being from the Divine Realm, Takeru and Tomoe could not simply return there. They still needed to create the Fountainhead fragrance, as the Okami ones did. And so, Takeru gave the fragrant flower note to a certain someone, requesting them to bring the flower. I would assume that someone nearly beheaded the guardian ape and managed to bring back the flower. The next ingredient required was the shelter stone. There is a healthy supply of those right at the wedding cave. After burning the incense, Takeru could simply take the stone as he was entering the wedding cave to add to the aroma. A sakura branch was even more accessible. Takeru brought one along with him from the Divine Realm, grafting it onto another tree at the back of the castle. There is also a mysterious sakura tree right there in Mibo village. What if this is where the Everblossom ended up? Or is it there for a different reason? It is hard to know for sure. But that is the only other sakura tree we can find in Ashina. The next requirement was Takeru's blood, but it seemed out of reach. Lord Takeru held his arm over the incense burner and attempted to cut it with the sword, but incredibly, the wound healed instantly, and not a drop of blood was shed. Lady Tomoe said, "Without it, your blood cannot be spilled." We know that the mortal blade is required to spill a divine heir's blood, and this is where we find a small contradiction. We are told multiple times that Tomoe could not find a mortal blade. She was desperately trying to cut her immortality. Her being bound to Takeru with an oath shackled him, forcing him to be sacrificed in order to perform the immortal severance. Emma tells us how Tomoe once tried to take her own life underneath the Everblossom tree. She failed because she did not have the mortal blade. At least that's what Emma saw with her own eyes. And this is actually really important. It proves that Tomoe and Takeru's story took place somewhere between Isshin's rebellion and now. Lord Takeru's cuffs are worsening still, Lady Tomoe wrote in her soft handwriting. Returning to the Divine Realm is hopeless, and I wish only to sever the dragon's heritage and restore his humanity. Restoration requires Everblossom and Mortal Blade, and yet I cannot acquire the latter. It was hidden by the High Priest of Senpou Temple, who has no desire to sever the immortal ties. It seems like restoration Tomoe is talking about is similar to the purification ending. Tomoe's attempt to take her own life before reaching the Divine Realm suggests that purification and severance are two different rituals. Purification requires the Everblossom and frees the divine heir from the shackles of their oathbound, killing the latter. Immortal severance requires a tear of the Divine Dragon and cuts the ties between the dragon and the heir, turning the heir into a normal human being. The heir has to be sacrificed during the severance if shackled by an oathbound. The problem is, one of the first things we learn about Takeru come in his own words.
Wrapped in the aroma of the fountainhead, I return to the Divine Realm. Those are supposedly the words he left behind.
His blood was spilled to complete the aroma, yet Tomoe stated she could not get the blade. How? This is probably a good time to remind. Subscribe or leave a like if you're enjoying the video. Thanks. Okay, since the mortal blade, called the Gracious Gift of Tears, is hidden away inside Senpou Temple, somehow what they found was the open door, the other, the black mortal blade. The problem is, this is where we kind of run out of information. I went through every location that could have a connection with Tomoe and Takeru, and failed to find even the slightest details which can be reasonably linked to them. But I have a few interesting things just for you, and I will try to make some sense of them. One thing that we can conclude is that Takeru failed to perform immortal severance. After all, the Gracious Gift of Tears can only be granted by the Mortal Blade, and this should be the reference to the Red Mortal Blade resting in the Senpou Temple. Its name is the gracious gift of tears, after all. Now, there is a myth I want to debunk. This is not Takeru. The kanji referring to this lady means essentially a woman who serves at a Shinto shrine, or a woman who serves a deity. For a male, different kanji would be used. So no, this is not Takeru. There is nothing in the game to hint what happens to him. There is a chance, and a pretty big one, that he succumbed to the stagnation and passed away. All we know is that divine heritage was bestowed upon Kuro. Now, I have a whole theory on how Takeru can actually be the divine dragon. It has some strange contradictions and really strange coincidences, but I am willing to share it with you guys if you're interested. Tell me if you are in the comments below. So what about Tomoe? Lady Tomoe probably joined Lord Takeru on his way to the Divine Realm. What happened to them after is really hard to say. But if you listen to Isshin talking about Lady Tomoe, he clearly states,
Visitation.
Tomoe. There aren't many masters of the sword like her. To see her fight, it's like she's dancing.
It almost feels like he's speaking of her as if she's alive, and I'm willing to believe it. She returned from the Divine Realm and passed some time in the Ashina castle before departing someplace else and leaving the Mortal Blade behind. The Mortal Blade passed on to Genichiro, Tomoe's trusted student. Perhaps Genichiro started desiring immortality after witnessing it in his mentor. Could the Shrine Maid be Tomoe? Yes, she could. If Takeru is the Divine Dragon and a couple other conditions are met, this could be her. But I promised to talk about this one another time. All that remains this day are the gravestones honoring Tomoe and Takeru in the back of the castle, alongside the hole in the ground where the Everblossom used to be. Will we see them in the future? Well, Takeru most likely passed away from the stagnation. Tomoe, on the other hand, there is a chance. There is a good chance. Putting together all the details for this theory was kinda painful. There are so many contradictions that had to be accounted for, and so many things that are never explained. I am currently working on 2 theories. The first one is about the Waters of Rejuvenation, and the second about the Divine Dragon. Tell me in the comments which one you want to hear first, or feel free to suggest any other mystery of Sekiro. Give the video a like if you found it entertaining, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you in the next one.